On April 24, 1943, John Oscroft was ordered to take and hold an enemy position identified as Point 174 alongside the 2nd Battalion Sherwood Foresters. It would be the young man's first time seeing action, and he was feeling anxious and uneasy. Still, Oscroft found some relief in knowing his battalion would be supported by 9 friendly tanks, but as the brutal battle raged on, the tanks were nowhere to be seen. Fighting valiantly, and after severe casualties, the British soldiers captured the enemy position on top of the hill, but soon spotted 2 dreaded Tiger Is. The newest German tanks were a mighty and devastating weapon, a remarkable achievement of German engineering and one of the most technologically advanced armored vehicles in the entire global conflict. As the tanks overwhelmed their position, the soldiers dropped to the floor to take cover. Tiger 131 was quickly approaching, and Oscroft suddenly took his PIAT anti-tank weapon and aimed it. With no reinforcements on site, it was their last chance at survival. A powerful new tank. In 1941, as the Third Reich executed Operation Barbarossa in a swift attempt to conquer the Soviet Union, German troops were shocked to learn that the Soviets had many more T-34 medium and KB-1 heavy tanks than expected. The Soviet tanks were mostly impervious to tank and anti-tank guns, and according to Henschel designer Erwin Otters, quote, "There was great consternation when it was discovered that the Soviet tanks were superior to anything available to the Heer." The grave development would be a significant obstacle if Germany wanted Barbarossa to be successful, and Hitler needed the new Panzerkampfwagen 6, which had been in development for almost 4 years, to be deployed as soon as possible. The war depended on it. Henschel and Sohn had been developing what would eventually become the Tiger as far back as January 1937, when the Waffenamt requested them to develop a Durchbruchwagen, or breakthrough vehicle, in the 30 to 33-ton range. Initially, just one prototype body was created, and it was never equipped with a turret. The model bore a striking resemblance to the Panzer III, and at the same time, its turret was similar to the one on the early Panzer IV-C. Still, the prototype was deemed inadequate, and the project was postponed. When the design was revised in 1941, the Tiger's development was approached with a completely different philosophy compared to earlier German tanks. Its predecessors balanced agility, armor, and firepower to create outstanding and versatile vehicles, but they were usually outgunned by their adversaries. Something different was needed. Taking tank design to the limit. This time, German technologists went all out, taking the vehicle to the absolute engineering limits at the time. While heavy, the Tiger was not slower than its lighter counterparts, but it packed much more firepower than most. A great deal of the Tiger's carried load stemmed from its 4-inch thick armor, which made the vehicle much more resistant to anti-tank armament. In comparison, the Soviet T-34, the tank that had stunned the Germans as they advanced through Russia and other Soviet states, was fitted with 2.56-inch plates. The 56 caliber 8.8 cm KWK-36 main gun mounted on the Tigers also surpassed the firepower delivered by the T-34's 76.2 mm cannon or any other Allied tank. With a combination of a flat trajectory from the high muzzle velocity and precision from Leit's Turmzielfernrohr TZF-9B sight, the Tiger's main gun was highly accurate and devastatingly lethal. The tank also needed a powerful engine and an unparalleled suspension system to carry such groundbreaking technology. Thus, its tail end held an engine compartment flanked by 2 individual rear compartments, each containing a fuel tank and radiator. The engine was developed exclusively for the Tiger by the Maybach Company of Berlin and under the technical leadership of Karl Maybach. The engineer would produce the engines for all the medium and heavy German tanks of World War II. The first Tiger engine was a V12 water-cooled gasoline model with a capacity of 1,302 cubic inches and a power output of 650 brake horsepower. Maybach HL210 TRM P45 was a remarkable work of engineering that provided a colossal amount of power considering its size. In addition, the suspension worked with 16 torsion bars, with 8 suspension arms per side. The swing arms were leading on one side and trailing on the other to keep the suspension system from taking too much space. There were 3 road wheels on each arm, in a so-called Schaft-Tellaufwerk overlapping an interleaved arrangement, comparable to that established on German half-tracked military vehicles of the pre-World War II era. The Tiger I would be the first all-track German armored fighting vehicle built in quantity to use such a road wheel arrangement. Still, all the groundbreaking features came at a hefty price, and at over 50 tons deadweight, the suspension, gearboxes, and other such systems had evidently reached their design limits. Even more, breakdowns would be frequent without regular maintenance, and the engines also tended to overheat, making constant upkeep crucial. Despite its limited flaws, the Tiger I was an agile and fast behemoth. When initially deployed, no Allied tank could even hope to penetrate the Tiger's incredibly thick armor or stand a chance against its powerful 88mm cannon. As the tank made it to the Eastern Front and then to Africa, it became almost impossible to fight it in conventional ways, and it would take several Allied tanks to defeat just one of these German brutes. An uphill battle. After 2 years stationed at home, awaiting a German invasion that never came, the British 2nd Battalion Sherwood Foresters were eager to return to the front lines. As luck would have it, they were sent to northern Africa to assist in the final stages of what would be known as the Tunisian Campaign. Most of the 2nd Battalion members were veterans who had fought in France at the outbreak of the war and had been forced to withdraw at Dunkirk. However, the returning unit was bolstered by a large batch of new recruits who had yet to see any action. Amid these inexperienced newcomers was Private John Oscroft, who felt anxious about his incoming first combat operation. He and the rest of the 2nd Battalion were especially concerned to learn that Germany had deployed Tiger 1s in the African theater. The sheer notion of fighting one of these quasi-mythical machines was enough to make the new recruits very nervous. For their first mission, the Sherwood Foresters were tasked with capturing an enemy position on the outskirts of Gueria el Attaque. The Germans had taken control of a broad hill dubbed Point 174, which provided a considerable tactical advantage to the faction controlling it. Oscroft felt uneasy. The position was heavily defended, and the Germans had the high ground. To make things worse, there was always the possibility that they might have Tiger support. Still, the young recruit found solace in knowing their attack would be supported by 9 Churchill tanks, which would be an enormous advantage. However, as the charge for Point 174 began, the Churchill tanks were nowhere to be found. They had been delayed, and the attack had to proceed without them. The Foresters fought a savage uphill battle, rushing several heavily defended positions while suffering significant casualties. Still, they made it to the top and secured the hill without the support of British armor. Unfortunately, their triumph was short-lived, and they watched in horror as a Panzer company rushed their position. Among the tanks were at least 2 Tigers. Fighting a Tiger. The German tanks soon overwhelmed the hill, forcing the Foresters to immediately drop and crawl to avoid the Tiger's fire. Oscroft watched as the world fell into chaos and disarray, and the British soldiers scrambled. The young private had been given the privilege of carrying a PIAT and was suddenly ordered to strike the incoming Tiger 131. Oscroft then positioned himself as close as he dared to the enemy juggernaut and fired, but the projectile struck the side of the turret and bounced off, leaving the vehicle unharmed. The situation was getting more dire by the minute, and the Foresters knew they wouldn't be able to keep their position for long. However, out of nowhere, the 9 Churchill tanks suddenly appeared on the battlefield and began firing at the German tanks. Tiger 131 immediately returned the fire, instantly destroying an Allied tank. The Allies then concentrated their efforts on the 131, with 2 Churchills firing at it simultaneously. As the tanks were firing at each other, a group of soldiers remembered that they had captured a 75mm cannon from the Germans and used it to fire at the German heavy tank, but the attack was mostly harmless before the Tiger's formidable armor. At that point, something unexpected happened. It's unclear if it came from the cannon or the Churchill round, but a lucky projectile encrusted itself on the Tiger's turret gear mechanism and completely disabled it. The sudden malfunctions then fooled the Germans into believing that the Allies had much more firepower than they actually possessed, and the crew immediately opened the hatch and fled in panic. As the battle raged on, the British forces ultimately prevailed. Furthermore, it was the first time the British had captured a Tiger. A major trophy. The captured tank soon became a sensation, but several experts and military engineers examined it before it was taken from the battlefield. The capture of a working Tiger was so important that even Prime Minister Winston Churchill took a photo with the vehicle during a visit to northern Africa. The tank would be studied and explored minutely, and the information gathered would not only help the Allies combat other Tigers, but also fuel innovation in tank design for the next decade. To this date, Tiger 131 remains the only intact and working Tiger 1 in the world. For decades, the capture of Tiger 131 had been credited to another battalion fighting in a different battle in North Africa. It would take a chance visit from John Oscroft's son to the British Tank Museum for the world to discover the true story. As Dale Oscroft read the information displayed on the Tiger 131 exhibit during a visit in 2009, he realized the details were remarkably similar to a story his father told him. After careful research, Dale was able to prove that his father and the Foresters had been the ones responsible for the capture of the legendary Tiger 131, finally unveiling the true story behind the iconic feat. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And to watch more history-inspired stories, don't forget to subscribe to all of our Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned for more.